Now, a day after the Alaska summit, outlines have emerged of peace proposals discussed by Russia's Vladimir Putin and his U.S. counterpart Donald Trump. According to reports which cited official sources, Russia proposed relinquishing tiny pockets of occupied Ukraine, and in return, Kiev would cede swathes of its eastern land, which Moscow has been unable to capture. Trump had confirmed in an interview with Fox News that he and Putin discussed land transfers along with security guarantees for Ukraine and had largely agreed. Sources said under the proposed Russian deal, Kiev would fully withdraw from the eastern Donetsk and Luhansk regions in return for a Russian pledge to freeze the front lines in the southern regions of Kherson and Zaporizhia. Post-meeting with Putin, Trump briefed Zelensky and the European leaders on his summit discussions. Trump said Ukraine should make a deal with Russia because Russia is very, very big and they are not.
Look, Russia's a very big power. And they're not. They're great soldiers, and they have great, but, you know, they also had the best equipment. You know, they had our equipment. And I gave them javelins, if you remember, in my first term. In fact, there was a statement, I gave javelins. You remember this?
Putin's offer ruled out a ceasefire until a comprehensive deal is reached, blocking a key demand of Zelensky, whose country is hit daily by Russian drones and ballistic missiles. Zelensky said Russia's refusal to accept a ceasefire was complicating efforts to end the war. He expressed skepticism about the future, pondering over the biggest question: how to get Russia to have the will to implement far greater peaceful coexistence with its neighbors for decades. Zelensky is due to travel to Washington on Monday to discuss with Trump a possible settlement of the full-scale war. Reports say European leaders are invited to come along with Zelensky. The French presidency, meanwhile, said the leaders of Britain, France, and Germany will be hosting a video call on Sunday involving Kiev's allies in a coalition of the willing to discuss steps towards peace in Ukraine. And to discuss more, we are now being joined by Edward P. Joseph from Washington, D.C. He's a lecturer at the Johns Hopkins University and a foreign policy analyst. Good to see you.
Good to be with you.
Now, Trump has dropped his push for a ceasefire in Ukraine in favor of pursuing a full peace accord with everything that has evolved since Putin and Trump. Are we looking towards a peace agreement?
We're looking towards a negotiation now that very much favors Russia and Vladimir Putin, and that's the unfortunate result of this Alaska meeting, what I call the Alaska fiasco. President Trump went into this meeting, in his own words, saying that he wanted a ceasefire, saying that he would be disappointed, very disappointed, and that there would be consequences, severe consequences, if he did not emerge with one. And of course, that nothing of the kind took place. And Vladimir Putin leaves Anchorage with not only the red carpet literally being rolled out, but with the specter of any serious pressure from the United States largely abated. It seems utterly unrealistic at this point that President Trump would actually follow through on his prior threats after he indicated that President Putin was, quote, tapping him along, that he would impose serious sanctions and utilize the very real American leverage on Russia and on Putin. But that seems to have totally evaporated in Anchorage. And so to your question, are we going to have a peace deal? We're going to have terms presented to President Zelensky on Monday, already presented to him in a phone call, but the details fully discussed at the White House on Monday, and they will be basically President Putin's terms. And the dynamics here are such that the pressure will be on the smaller country, the country that's defending its sovereignty and territorial integrity with its own soldiers. That's very important to point out here. Not relying on other countries to do the fighting, but Ukraine itself. And so those are the dynamics. It's Ukraine that will be under pressure. And you hear President Trump saying, well, Russia's a big country. Well, that's precisely why Ukraine is the one that needs the backing of even bigger countries like the United States and its NATO allies. Please.
Absolutely. And that being said, now security guarantees have also been another sticking point. How likely do you think it is for Zelensky to agree to these concessions and security guarantees? And what does it mean for European allies at this point?
Well, you're right to point to security guarantees because those become all important here. Now, remember what seems to be on the table is that Ukraine has to cede territory in the Donbas region, Donetsk and Luhansk, that Russia doesn't even fully control. So that's part of the demand here, first of all. And second, all of these talks and negotiations take place while Russia continues to attack civilians. So that's a second point here. Then the third point, what does Ukraine get? Ukraine gets a promise that there will be a ceasefire elsewhere. In other words, you give up territory for the promise of a ceasefire elsewhere. Well, what does that mean? Is this permanent? Is this truly permanent? How will Ukraine be assured that Russia will not simply use this pause of a ceasefire to regroup and become even stronger and then take more territory and attack again? How can it be assured of that? And that's where this question of security guarantees comes in. Now, President Trump has said that President Putin has agreed to security guarantees. Really? Well, what are they? The ultimate guarantee, of course, is Ukraine's membership in NATO. That would provide the Article 5 guarantee. That's the one for all and all for one guarantee. Is that on the table? Presumably not. So what actually are the security guarantees? And we have to remember the context here. We have a United States led by President Trump that shows every indication by President Trump of a reluctance to actually stand up to President Putin and really show him that there are serious consequences for him continuing this war. Please.
Absolutely. Of course, we'll have to yet see how the Europeans react to this. Well, Europeans have been invited, as reports do say, and we have to see if they do come along with Zelensky there for the discussions and how this plays out for the whole of Europe. But thank you so much for joining us on the show and giving your perspective. That was Edward P. Joseph joining us from Washington, D.C. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.